He's an avid hunter. We always hear about his hunting trips, and he's currently married for 37 years and has 2 daughters and lives here in Arizona. So without further ado, I turn it over to Mr. Mike Palmer.
Thank you, Charlie. Really appreciate S&S Solutions, yourself, Ashley, for sponsoring this presentation. Also, let me thank internally in Megger, Meredith Kenton for her, in our marketing department, for her assembly of this presentation. So, you know, what we're here today to talk about is one of the newest test sets at Megger. My years as a technician, one of the most time-consuming parts was trying to get a job done and not having the right tool. The time and effort it takes to make multiple trips back and forth to your vehicle, office, or even carrying multiple test sets to the work location can be very. Having the right tool, you know, in your toolbox to qualify whatever testing you're trying to do, either on the copper, telecom, CATV, power cables, grounding, bonding, is a huge part of your day as a technician. And not to mention that the test set that will safely identify certain harmful voltages around the work area. The right tool to address all these issues is the MFT70. Here we have a picture of the front of the MFT70, and the really neat part about the instrument is it has a test button on either side. So as you hold it in your hand, or if you have it hanging around your neck or on top of a structure, you can hit the test button on either side when you set up your leads. It's also got a lock feature, so if you're testing and you want to lock it so you don't have to hold your hand on the test button, you can hit the lock button. Menu control is right on the face, left and right menu control. It's rubber molded on the outside, so it's pretty rugged out in the environment that we all work in. The leads are conveniently plugged in the top, and they're at an angle coming out of the test set, so it's really easy to plug in, and you don't have to worry about them pulling out. It also has a backlight control in low or dimly lighted areas. The backlight LCD display really gives a good focus for you when you're out in the sunlight. And the storage and communication data logging piece of the unit is right here on the right side, so you can record, send, and retrieve all from this dial on the right. The test set is set up into 2 areas. On the left here is the insulation and continuity test area on this dial. And then on the right is the ground testing functions. We also have the ability on this test set to check GFCI functions in a standard 110 outlet. And here is the selector right here on the right that gets you in the right place on the instrument to do that test. The other unique part about this test set is you can actually use it to test and see if there's any foreign voltage on any metallic object around where you're testing. Let's talk about some of the benefits of the test set. One of the unique features of it is it does have rechargeable cells inside, so you don't have to worry about carrying multiple batteries around with you. The adjustable limit alarms on the continuity insulation testing feature are very easily controlled by the menu over here where the little wrench is, and you can select them in the rotary dial on this left part of the meter. The other unique feature of this meter is as soon as you're in the continuity loop and RCD modes, as soon as the leads are connected to the circuit under test, you're ready to go. You don't have to worry about hitting the test button or anything else. It automatically goes to the test. Another feature that's very, very nice to have is up to 1,000 result storages internally in the meter, and then they're able to be Bluetoothed over to your laptop, tablet, device for later looking at, sending to engineering, or whatever you'd like to do. The other benefit we talked about earlier is the fact that this unit is not only a functioning insulation resistance tester, but it's also a ground tester. And it does the tests that are displayed on your screen, including a 2-pole, 3-pole attached rod technique, which we'll talk about later. And it also replaces a clamp-on meter if you don't have one. The other unique part about this meter, since we do call it a multifunction test set, is it can replace the 4 meters that you have on the right. And that's what we talked about in the beginning, where, you know, having the right test set for the job, you can actually just carry one test set instead of all 4 of these. What comes with the unit? It's displayed on your screen. It's got a blow molded case, all the leads that you would need to use in the different test functions, including the ground test leads, the probes, and these clamps that we talked about earlier that would replace the clamp-on test feature. Another thing that we came up with for this particular test unit was to have a quick start guide. It comes with a 37-page user guide on a disc, but we also, upon request, can send you a quick start guide to get you going immediately. And we can send it to you digitally, or we can send it to you by paper in the snail mail. Another thing we created through our marketing department is our brain sharks. My colleagues Jay Clark and Meredith Kenton put together these brain sharks on the MFT70. It allows our customers to look at them anytime you want. We just send you the link. When you're complete on going through the brain shark, you'll receive a certificate of completion for your training file, and you never have to wonder where the directions are. Those CDs get lost, the paperwork for the user guide gets lost. But with BrainShark, you can have the links on your smartphone or laptop, tablet, whatever device, and you always can go look at it and remember how to use the test set. I talked earlier about safety, and the unit allows you to check any metallic device that's near your work location to see if there's any voltage that could harm you. That's done very easily by touching a finger to the circle on the face of the test set and applying the probe to the metallic device. And on the screen, it'll show you what the voltage is that red probe is touching. I'd like to walk you briefly through measuring voltage on the unit. As I discussed earlier, there's a knob on the left that controls voltage measurement. And it's simple to just hook up the leads to the circuit under test. If it's a telephone cable, it'd be tip and ring. If it's a power cable, it would be your circuit on the power cable. And you just hook those up, plug them into the test set, and hit the test button. And it'll show you live what the voltage is. It'll also tell you the frequency. If you need to store results, it's as easy as, I'm sorry. If you need to store results, it's as easy as hitting this button on the bottom left one time. A little floppy disk will appear in the left-hand top of the screen, and it'll tell you what position it stored that current test in. If you need to measure continuity, once again, it's fairly easy to do on this unit. You connect your leads. The null symbol will show up immediately when you're on the dial here under continuity, and the null will appear on the screen. Hook it up to your tip and ring after you've nulled the test leads, and you have a continuity test being performed. And on the screen of the unit, it'll show you the current and the resistance that you're seeing on the continuity. If you need to do an insulation resistance test, once again, it's just as easy as turning the dial to the voltage that you need for that particular test you're doing on the left. hook the cables, the leads up to your cable, whatever type of cable that would be. Press and hold the test button, and you'll get a measurement back on the screen of the total insulation resistance for that particular circuit. In the telecom industry, of course, we don't go over 500 volts, and we can also hold down the lock button anytime we want, so we don't have to hold our finger on the test button. If we're doing a 2-clamp stakeless ground resistance measurement, we set the dial to the rotary dial to 2-clamp, and as you can see on the picture here, the 2 clamps are put on our circuit under test, plugged into the appropriate lead positions on the unit, and we make sure that they're positioned about 4 inches apart, and that would appear on the dial, on the left dial, on the resistivity range, and then it would be on the clamp setting, the dual clamp setting here on the right side of the meter. That's as easy as it is. This diagram over here kind of shows a pole to pole to ground resistance measurement, and that's one of the common ways that you'd want to test, whether you're at the base of a pole in a telecom enclosure or maybe in a power transformer feed. You'd always have that electrode that you're testing. It's not, the 2-clamp system isn't good for everything, but it does do pretty good on loop resistance back to ground. Of course, you're going to hit the test button and the unit will show you a resistance reading so that you can say it or write it down. Of course, we always want to make sure that our clamps are clean when they come together and make sure there's no debris. So one of the other common things we use the 2-clamp stakeless test for is to test unbalances in grounding in central offices, hubs, and head ends. Here's a brief diagram, kind of a straightforward diagram on grounds coming out of individual bays in an office, and a way to hook the clamps up to test for an unbalance. We always recommend home runs, but sometimes the application in the past has made it just all bonded together, which can cause noise. Once again, we want the clamps to be about 4 inches apart. And once we set up our meter to, once again, the resistance setting with the dual clamps, we'll get and hit the test button. We will get a good reading back on the meter, and that'll tell us as we go bay to bay and measure grounds if they all have the same resistivity. It's very easy to do with the MFT70. Here's an application where out in the field you run into electrode at the outside of a house where you're installing a service maybe for telecom or cable TV, and the only place to ground to is a cold water pipe maybe, or an existing power ground. You can use the 2-pole test on this meter, position the dial once again to resistance, and then put it on the 2-pole setting, and you can measure that ground there, give you a reading right back on the screen immediately for you after you hit the test button. And then the traditional follow potential test is also easily done with this meter. You hook it up as we would any Megger ground tester, with the green lead always going to the electrode, and the other 2 leads, the potential and the current leads, being put out in the same path with the electrode. And you're going to once again hook turn your dials to resistance on the left and 3-pole on the right side of the meter. Press and release the test button, and you'll get a resistance reading for that test very quickly. I mentioned earlier about the attached rod technique. This is in cases where you have a thermal weld, or in the old days the CAD welds, and there's no way to take that apart to sectionalize. Well, this meter will actually do the attached rod technique using the current clamp. We hook that up to the other location. In other words, this is the follow potential test here. We hook the current clamp going into the building in this third position here, and put it on 3P with the clamp, which identifies it as the art method. And you hit the test button, and you're going to get the reading. The machine does all the work for you, does all the math, and it'll give you a precise reading, even though all these are attached together. Once again, we want to make sure our clamps are free from dust or debris. A lot of questions we get in our app engineering group about, if I don't have soil, how do I test? If it's just a hard surface, asphalt, how do I do that test if I can't put these probes in the ground? So the MFT70, along with other Megger ground testing units, will do this test very easily by same way green always goes to the existing electrode under test. And these are laid, the probes are laid on the ground with the leads plugged into them. You put moisture on them, put water on them, and you just lay the probes on their side and spray with a little bit of water, and you have a good test made. Next, I'd like to talk about a little bit some of the industries and applications for this particular test set. One of the ones that we're getting quite a few questions and we see in the marketplace really gearing up is line powering. As most of you know, we're transitioning from more centralized makeup of the network to more fiber with a distributed architecture. We're seeing a lot of DSLAMs and VDSL, and especially wireless small cells, 5G being built out. In these cases, it's the numbers are really accelerating, so you have to find a way to deliver the service out to the network in a way that regular local power in the way of a power meter might not be available, or it's too costly. Battery backup, of course, is very expensive, and there's just a lot of logistical challenges to this kind of architecture. We're seeing more and more the composite hybrid type cables with fiber optic loose tube around the outside, and then actual power cable, metallic power cable in the center. And the cable that's in the center it can conduct direct current, and it can be used for line powering. So we can not only use the regular copper cable pairs, but we can also use these hybrid type cables to deliver a line powering solution. And the MFT70 is uniquely designed to make the qualification tests that are needed in these kind of environments to turn them up. This is just a slide on some of those architectures that are out there, wireless, and also remote nodes that feed the power in either direction. It can either be in an aerial environment or it can be in a buried environment, and this is where that composite cable comes in. You feed to a local point, and then the composite would take over and actually feed the network that needs to be powered with line power. And the MFT70 does a great job of doing the qualification tests that are necessary. Here's one of them displayed on your screen now from EnerSys and Alpha line powering. There's a group of tests that have to be done in this environment, and it's easy to carry 2 or 3 meters to get this test done, but if you carry the MFT70, it can be easily done, including any grounding and bonding issues that may crop up on the remote terminal. Some of the other market segments we're seeing, I already talked about telecom, but the MFT70 will not only look for sheath faults, but it'll do the IR testing on the individual cable pairs. It'll also, of course, Megger has had a long-standing test and measurement space inside the power arena with 3-phase power cables. We've been doing that for years, but we also can accommodate the cell and composite hybrid type cable along with the telecom cable. So those market segments are a place that the MFT70 fits in very well. Another segment that we see a great use for the MFT70, especially because the cell towers are already built out, but we know there's going to be more 5G towers coming out. these cell towers have to have a grounding presence in them, and all the types of features that the MFT70 does in the way of grounding lends itself to measure and test grounds for these towers. We're seeing more and more intersection cameras and security cameras, and the unit can easily test any kind of a hybrid or composite cable that feeds those locations. Of course, the street light industry has long been around. You know, as we pull in cable and conduit for these different applications, they should be tested for the bends and the, you know, the 90s and anything else under construction that can happen. Do an IR test and verify that those power pairs and those metering pairs are working fine. And of course, on the right here is a typical telecom premise wiring. Not only can you do insulation resistance testing on the Cat 5, 6, 7, whatever's going into the house, but you can also measure the ground resistance on these grounds on the outside of the house with the MFT70. So we have some questions, I think. Please ask away. I don't know if Charlie and Ashley will be doing that.
Anybody have any questions at this point? Don't see anything in the chat.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Hey, it's John Cotter. How you doing?
Hey, John.
Hey, early in the presentation there, you were showing how the tester can detect voltage with just touching the wand on the area, but I didn't see
Yes.
a ground connection with that. Does it
Yeah,
not
if
need
your
a?
finger... Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't see where you would have a ground position to measure to, or complete
so
that circuit.
It's you. It's you as the human. You're touching the middle of the screen on the test set, and the other side is the circuit is going through the test set itself from the metallic object, and that's picking up the return to actually display on the screen what the if there's any voltage present.
Oh, okay. Hey, thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
So we had a question come in. It says, so you are repurposing the copper wires to run power. Let me see. I missed it. Guess I was told I was cut out. It says, so you are repurposing the copper wires to run power as opposed to being a communication medium.
Yeah, so there's a lot of copper that's been transferred over fiber networks, nodes that are going through town now, and those old copper pairs are useful. You know, we tend to call it the telecom power grid because there's companies, both large and independent companies, that are realizing that instead of paying a recurring cost of a power meter, we can actually buy a line power circuit and network and put that in one time and not have any recurring power bills. It's a plus or minus 190 circuit. It's safe. It's easily put into the network with some qualification. I showed that qualification sheet on the screen towards the end of the presentation. So you're really it's a great question because you're repurposing that network, and a lot of the companies are getting creative about what they're using that for. It's not only their own uses to power DSLAMs and nodes in the fiber optic network, but it's also they're selling the service to security companies and you know, cameras for intersections. You know, a lot of the cities, I live in Chandler, Arizona, they have their own fiber optic network, but there's some cities that don't have that updated fiber optic network, so they can still have cameras out on the highway using the old copper cable pairs. Hope that answers your question.
Anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, if you don't, go ahead.
Okay.
So another question we get all the time is, you know, if I buy one of these, do I get any training? And And you know, I mentioned about the brain sharks that are out there. We'll give you a link and you can do it at your own pace, but we offer live training on this also. If we can't physically get there, we'll get on a webinar with you and we'll walk through the meter with you. We have a team of app engineers attached to our plant in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, that can help you answer any questions, including training when you buy one of these. Another question we get is software. It comes with the software you need to download. That software puts it into a CSV file that can be easily converted to an Excel, and you can save it for historical reasons, yearly plant reviews, and send it to engineers on what's going on in the cable environment in your area.
Hey, Mike, John Cotter again.
Hey, John.
What's the list price on this?
Yeah, so the list right now is $23.50, but we're running a special. We're running a special, and that's everything, including clamps. We're running a special through S&S Solutions, so anybody that gets a quote now is going to be able to take advantage of that special.
Okay, thanks, buddy.
Yep.
Well, if there's no other questions, I would like to thank everybody for attending and especially thank Mike for taking his time to share with us on the MFT70. Again, if there's any questions that you do have, please reach out to us. We will definitely get those questions answered for you. There will be a email sent to you that has a link to this webinar and along with the specs for the MFT70. And feel free, again, if there's any questions or anything you'd like to see, a demonstration, please do not hesitate in reaching out to your S&S person and we'll get it taken care of for you. With that, I bid you guys a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.